Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the podcast or video, depending on what platform you're watching. And I didn't record one last week. And the simple truth is, I had some bad news. So, my beautiful dog Rowan, who you may be able to hear snoring in the background, got diagnosed with laryngeal cancer just the day before. And it's come completely out of the blue. I think I've probably spoken a bit about his chronic bronchitis that he's had. Put my phone out of the way so it doesn't go off. And he was struggling a little bit with his exercise, and so thought it was an exacerbation of that and was looking for another respiratory referral when he just got worse. And emergency trip to Vets Now Manchester. Massive shout out to them because they've been fantastic. And yes, laryngeal cancer, so not the bronchitis. That was a bit of a red herring. So really awful. I am going to be doing a podcast and a blog all about cancer help and what I'm doing, and a bit more about sharing his story. So do stay tuned, because I think there's an awful lot of stuff that's out there. But anyway, we are digressing because that is not the subject for tonight's live, which is all about sort of reactive dogs and why prong collars and aversives like that do not work. And the idea for this really came about because I saw a most beautiful dog out a couple of weeks ago that had been rescued by the guy who was walking it. And lovely man, but the dog was very reactive, and he had a prong collar. And I sort of said to him, "Oh, this isn't the best thing to use." And we had a little chat, and I sort of signposted us to some resources. But I thought, God, it would have been so good if I'd actually had a blog post to explain that. I could have said, look, check out this blog post because it's going to give you all the information, because I think it's just poorly understood, and a lot of people will be like, oh no, this is going to really help, this is how you're going to help your dog. And in actual fact, that's not the case at all. And it's interesting that I'm my choice to record this today because a friend of mine has spoken up about their use at a canicross competition, and also grot collars as well, and has been banned because she spoke up. And there is no place for these types of tools in sports arenas, or in my opinion in dog training. But yeah, I'm absolutely just appalled. But anyway, let's that's the subject for tonight's podcast or live. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Dr. Helene. I'm an emergency medicine doctor and also a certified animal aromatherapy specialist, and I love to help people with an integrative approach to their health and that of their dogs. Now, I'm also do a lot of behaviour work as well as part of my animal aromatherapy, and reactive dogs and anxious dogs is something that I am very, very passionate about, having had years of experience on this topic. Lucky me. But no, seriously, it is lucky me, because I think, these challenging dogs do make you better owners, and I wouldn't have been doing all the stuff I'm doing if it wasn't for sort of dogs like my beautiful dog Treacle, and my beautiful dog Inca. So prong collars and reactive dogs. So we're going to talk about the science behind why they don't work. Okay. And it's very easy when you are struggling with a reactive dog to look for something that will potentially be a quick fix and will help, because it is very stressful having a reactive dog. And it's not just hard for you, but it's also the way people can treat you. It's really, I cannot tell you the amount of times I've come home from a dog walk and just been sat in my landy in tears. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that as well. And it does feel overwhelming. And also, if you've got, I'm only 44 kilograms, and having a dog that's quite powerful, that's lunging and everything, it's quite scary. And again, the temptation may be to actually put them on a prong because it's going to be easier for you to walk. But actually, again, this isn't going to help. And if you actually look at sort of the latest in dog behavior, this explains exactly why. And it's not a helpful training tool. And it can actually worsen the problem and cause significant harm. So let's just talk a bit about the up-to-date science on why they're not great. So reactivity is an emotional response. And actually, if you're just putting a prong collar on a dog or an e-collar, you're not actually getting to the root cause, which is the emotion. This is not because your dog is bad or disobedient. These kind of behaviors are frequently rooted in fear, anxiety, or frustration. And so when they see a trigger, or smell a trigger or hear a trigger, such as a dog, a bike, a person, their brain goes into a fight or flight response. And the behavior you see is their attempt to create distance from that perceived threat. And I think it's really important to look at reactivity and understand that it's not just visual triggers, because I've got a blind dog, so I can tell you it's not just visual triggers. For her, it can be sound or it can be smell. And sometimes I can't work out what it is, or, I just have to accept that that's actually what it is. And so I have to have little strategies in place to manage it. So a prong collar works on the principle of positive punishment, the same as an e-collar does, which means it adds an unpleasant stimulus, which is the pinch of the prongs. And I'm going to link my blog post in the show notes of this as well, if you're listening on YouTube, or I'll link it on Facebook as well, which actually has got pictures. So it adds an unpleasant stimulus to decrease the behavior. So when the dog lunges, the collar tightens, causing a sharp, painful sensation. So temporarily it might stop the lunging, but it doesn't do anything to change the dog's underlying fear. And what happens is the dog may now associate the pain from the collar with the very thing that scared them in the first place, making their fear and anxiety even worse. So this creates a cycle. The dog sees the trigger and feels scared. The dog barks and lunges to make the trigger go away. The collar pinches, causing pain. The dog is now associating the trigger with both fear and pain, so it's getting worse. And so this can increase the stress and lead to aggression. And there have been numerous studies and veterinary sort of veterinary behaviour organisations, including sort of veterinary societies, who have consistently warned against aversive training methods such as prong collars. And research has shown that using punishment-based methods can increase a dog's overall stress levels. So dogs trained with aversive tools often show more stress signals such as lip licking, yawning, panting, and a lowered body posture, even when the aversive tool isn't in use. So for a reactive dog who is already operating in a heightened state of stress, this can have disastrous consequences. So, it's really important to understand that actually chronic stress can lead to a state of learned helplessness, where the dog becomes withdrawn and apathetic, or it can lead to a greater risk of aggression, which I'm sure no one wants. And when a dog is constantly experiencing pain or fear around triggers, they can often decide that the only way to avoid the unpleasant sensation is to be more aggressive, which then can lead to redirected aggression towards the owner or the other dog. So this is something that you really want to be careful with. I've also got Seren Spaniel snoring away under here as well, and a motorbike outside. So they don't actually teach your dog what to do instead. And so prong collars are designed to suppress unwanted behavior, but they don't teach your dog what the desired behavior is. So the dog might stop pulling to avoid the pinch. So you get, oh, look, I can walk my dog nicely, but they haven't actually learned how to walk politely on a loose lead or feel comfortable around their triggers. So what the prong is doing is or the e-collar is teaching your dog what not to do, but the dog needs to learn what to do instead. And the most effective and humane approach is to use positive reinforcement, which focuses on rewarding desired behavior. And I read a post in a Facebook group earlier, and someone was saying, oh, these force-free methods don't work, it doesn't work. And they do work. But the thing is, you don't get the quick fix. And I'm using quote marks if you're listening to this, because these things are not fixes, but it takes longer to do things kindly, but it's more effective because you are changing the emotion around the behavior and you are creating new neural pathways. So using positive reinforcement, which is more effective because instead of pain and fear, you are helping your dog focus using two key strategies. So the first one is counter conditioning. So you're changing your dog's emotional response to a trigger. So this will involve creating a positive association with a trigger. For example, every time your dog sees the trigger or smells it or hears it at a safe distance where they don't react, you immediately reward them with a high value treat. And over time, they learn that that trigger, however they perceive it through their senses, actually predicts something wonderful, shifting their emotional state from fear to anticipation. So it's really, really useful. And I actually use essential oils in this way as well, because initially my blind dog wouldn't take treats when we were out. So I really couldn't do a lot of this desensitization and counter conditioning because she just couldn't, she was just too stressed. Um, and it didn't matter how far I was away from the trigger. You know, we literally would just walk around the car park where I live. We couldn't even go into the street. Once I started using oils, I was able to improve her calmness, boost her confidence, and create familiarity with these environments, these people, these other things, these metal gates that she was finding difficult. So the second strategy you want to use is desensitization. So gradually exposing your dog to the trigger at a level they can handle. And so this means starting at a distance where they notice the trigger, but they don't react, then slowly decreasing the distance as they become more comfortable. So this is often done in controlled, systematic training sessions. And this is one of the things I did first with Inca, with the gate, where she didn't want to go to. I actually put oil on the gate so that she actually became quite desensitized, because the gate, far from smelling metal, started to smell of her favorite things. And then she started to not be bothered by the clang of the gate. And now when we go for a walk, I don't have, what's up? I've also got Bambi in here, if you can hear other noises. Yes, I know you're such a good boy. So she is now really keen to go through all the gate. And now what I have to say to her is, steady, wait a minute, careful, because otherwise she's blind. She's going to walk into the gate. So when you use these methods combined with proper management, like avoiding triggers in the early stages of training, they are going to build confidence and trust, and they strengthen the bonds between you and your dog. Yes, they do, Bambi. Right, I'm going to have to pick you up and put you on my lap, clearly, because Sir needs a cuddle. Where's my microphone? There you go. And they turn a scary world into a manageable one. Now, you may say, well, it's all very well, but I've got a dog that I need to walk and I can't walk them. Well, you know what? You put them in a harness, and before you say harnesses encourage pulling, they don't. They are a tool, but they make it more comfortable for your dog, and you will have better control. You use a collar or a double-ended, well, you're going to use a double-ended lead. I actually don't put anything on my collars, but I use a double-ended lead with one clasp of the lead on the back D-ring of the harness and one on the front D-ring, so that the dog, if they pull, they actually turn themselves around and you have good control. And too often I've heard people say, oh no, they're just for pulling. And like I said, they are a tool. They will make it more comfortable for your dog to pull, and that is why you have the double-ended lead. But if you let your dog pull in the collar, you are actually risking things like glaucoma. You know, that pressure on the neck can cause glaucoma. And so it's really important that actually we don't stress our dogs out like that. And it's you know, I have walked incredibly large dogs who are pulling with a harness and a double-ended lead very, very effectively. And one thing I want to point out as well is, you know, if you go to a behaviorist who is promising you a quick fix for something like that, then run. And if you meet a behaviorist, because when in the early days of Inca, I did make a few inquiries about behaviorists, and one of them was telling me that, and I think this is said to owners a lot, oh, I'm not interested in her history. The reason you have a reactive dog is because you don't have control. And I was like, So 6 dogs and only one's reactive. So never mind the fact that this dog was found in a river when she was 2 weeks old. Never mind the fact that because she was so vulnerable, she didn't get some socialization. Never mind the fact that she's blind and she's really scared of sounds. No, just owner blaming that it's because of lack of control. And that isn't the case at all. You know, Inca's reactivity is very multifaceted. And the same with a lot of dogs. And owner shaming is not right. And if someone is doing that to you, you need to just run and go and find someone else. Come to me, I can help you. But, you know, in all seriousness, it's really important that you do get professional help, and whether that's me or someone else, you know, look for someone who practices kind methods. I only work online. Occasionally I do in person if you're in the Manchester area, but I predominantly work online. But there are other people as well who do in person, and if you are stuck and you want someone in person rather than online, do reach out, because I do know people and I can recommend someone to you as well. So The upshot of this is, while a prong collar or an e-collar might seem like a quick fix, it is a short-term solution with dangerous long-term consequences for a reactive dog. And it's very clear from the science, and that for true behavioural change, you need to address the underlying emotion with patience, compassion, and positive reinforcement is the only effective and ethical path forward. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm just aware that you might not see the beautiful Bambi. So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you have found this useful, please hit the like, share, follow, and don't forget to subscribe. I do different topics every week. Next week is bound to be a human topic. Oh, actually, I might do a cancer topic next week. I might cover cancer. We'll see. We'll see. I need to get my brain in gear to be able to cover it, but there is some important information I need to get out about it. But as always, if you've got comments or anything, feel free to just comment in the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can leave me a 5-star review, that would be very, very appreciated, because it helps me continue to create more content. And let me know what you want to learn about as well. And you've got to admit, doesn't Bambi look absolutely smug as anything? So have a beautiful evening. Stay safe, stay well. Bye.